All right, welcome back. Today we are going over Seneca's letter to Lucilius. We are doing letter 69 here. So let's just jump into it here. All right, this is on rest and restlessness. He says, I do not like you to change your headquarters and scurry about from one place to another. My reasons are, first, that such frequent filleting means an unsteady spirit, and the spirit cannot, through retirement, grow into unity unless it has ceased from its inquisitiveness and its wanderings. To be able to hold your spirit in check, you must first stop the runaway flight of the body. Okay, so he's addressing this idea of moving around, going to different places. Really, I think what you could say today would be, going after one thing and then going after another thing, right? There's a squirrel, right? The whole shiny object syndrome that we tend to have, right? And he says here that, what's going to happen is if you keep on doing this, it's going to be an unsteady spirit, okay? You cannot really get to this retirement, okay? You cannot really start to get into the deep things of philosophy unless you've stopped this, unless you've stopped these wanderings, okay? In verse 2, he says, my second reason is that the remedies which are most helpful and those which are not interrupted are those which are not interrupted, okay? You should not allow your quiet or the oblivion to which you have consigned your former life to be broken into. Give your eyes time to unlearn what they have seen and your ears to grow accustomed to more wholesome words. Whenever you stir abroad, you will meet, even as you pass from one place to another, things that will bring back your old cravings. Okay, so this is kind of interesting here. So what he's saying here is that the second reason for this is that the things that are going to be the most helpful to you are the things that are not interrupted, right? So if you're interrupted all the time, if you're constantly going from one thing to another, let's say that you're going to the gym and you're starting a weightlifting program. Well, if you're like, oh, well, maybe I'm going to actually do kickboxing, or maybe I'm going to start running, and you never continue to do the one thing, you're not going to get much of a benefit from it, okay? He says that you have to, you can't allow this peace to be broken into. You have to, be and if you've noticed, when you start to do something, you get steady in it, right? So for example, I'm creating these high quality videos on my other channel, on the Bulldog Mindset official channel, and as I'm creating these videos, I'm getting better and better each time. And as long as I keep on doing this, I'm going to keep on improving. But I kept on jumping from one thing to another, and that was messing me up for such a long time. He says that give your eyes time to unlearn what they have seen, your ears to grow accustomed to more wholesome words. So you've got to adjust. You need to have time to do this. It takes time, right? So you might be like, oh, this isn't working. Give it time, right? He says, when you stir abroad, you will meet, even as you pass from one place to another, things that will bring back your old cravings. So think about that. If you're constantly going around, like if you're trying to change something, you have to stick to it for long enough, because the old you is going to come back. There's going to be things that are going to make you want to go back to what you're used to, right? Just as he who tries to be rid of an old love must avoid every reminder of the person once held dear, for nothing grows again so easily as love. Similarly, he who would lay aside his desire for all the things which he used to crave so passionately must turn away both eyes and ears from the objects which he has abandoned. The emotions soon return to the attack. Okay, so he's giving a great example here, and we can apply this in multiple areas. So he's saying that, if you're in love with someone and you break up with them, or you want to get rid of that feeling, when you get over them, right? Get over a breakup. You have to no contact. You have to avoid them, and the reason why is because it'll grow real quickly, right? So it'll come back really quickly. So you've got to avoid all the reminders. He says, for nothing grows again so easily as love, which is very true if you've experienced this, right? And so the same thing with anything that you're trying to quit, right? If you're trying to quit a bad habit, right, for instance, you've got to stay away from it completely, because if you don't, then it's going to pull you back in. It's going to pull you back in very, very quickly. He says, he who would lay aside his desire for all things which he used to crave so passionately must turn away both eyes and ears from the objects which he has abandoned. Right? Because you're going to fall back into this. That is really key. In verse 4, he says, At every turn, they will notice before their eyes an object worth their attention. There is no evil that does not offer inducements. Avarice promises money, luxury, a varied assortment of pleasures, ambition, purple robe, and applause, and the influence which results from applause and all that influence can do. So he's saying that there's always going to be something that you're going to see that's going to be able to draw you in, right? All of these things, these promises, these things that you want, these things will tempt you back in. He says in verse 5, vices tempt you by the rewards which they offer. But in the life of which I speak, you must live without being paid. Scarcely will a whole lifetime suffice to bring our vices into subjection and to make them accept the yoke. Swollen as they are by long continued indulgence, and still less. If we cut into our brief span by any interruptions. Okay, so I kind of interrupted that sentence, but it's a long one. Vices tempt you by rewards which they offer, but in the life of which I speak, you must live without being paid. Scarcely will a whole lifetime suffice to bring our vices into subjection and make them accept the yoke, swollen as they are by long continued indulgence, and still less if we cut into our brief span by any interruptions. Even constant care and attention can scarcely bring any one undertaking to full completion. So what he's saying is he's saying that even if you dedicate your life to getting rid of your vices, it's going to be a hard thing to do. It's very unlikely that they're going to go away, that you're going to be able to command those things, but especially more so if you interrupt it, if you interrupt the process, right? If you're trying to quit something, you're trying to stop something, trying to stop doing something, and then you allow yourself, right? So you have to completely quit, right? There's, there was a time where I smoked cigarettes, and I didn't smoke all the time, but sometimes I had more than others. I usually didn't have my own cigarettes, or I would buy a pack and throw it away, right, or something like that. But I never completely quit it until I completely quit it, right? I had to completely quit it. Otherwise, if I'm allow myself to have a cigarette here or there, I'll just continue to do that. And yeah, maybe you might say that that's not too bad, but my point is that when you interrupt that process, you make it harder. You make it harder to quit. And so if there's an addiction, something you're trying to quit, you can't interrupt that process. You have to completely abandon that thing. He says, if you will give ear to my advice, ponder and practice this, how to welcome death, or even, if circumstances commend the course, to invite it. There is no difference whether death comes to us or whether we go to death. Make yourself believe that all ignorant men are wrong when they say it is a beautiful thing to die one's own death. But there is no man who does not die his own death. What is more, you may reflect on this thought. No one dies except on his own day. You are throwing away none of your own time, for what you leave behind does not belong to you. Farewell. Okay. So he kind of made a abrupt jump here into contemplating on death, which is something that he talks about quite a bit. But I think the reason why he's saying this is that it's kind of part of that thing that you have to focus on. You have to focus on this, right? Like this is part of the work, is to actually be able to accept this, to accept your fate, to accept what is going to happen. And so you cannot interrupt this process. Like you have to stop going everywhere. Stop, just focus on one thing, right? Again, in a lot of his passages, he talks about this idea of people only beginning to live their life at the end of their life. And that's not a good thing, right? That's how most people are. So if you stick to a thing, then you will start to see success, right? Whether that be breaking a habit or starting a new one.